Announcement number one, I'm going to hit you with a couple of more, and then we can get rolling. For starters, the big one, the important one, senior dinner tomorrow night at Pirates Landing. You're going to meet here at the church at 4:30 p.m. So that's tomorrow, 4:30. If seniors want to join, we'll meet out here at the Fellowship Hall at 4:30. And then one more thing on Impact. I know I mentioned it last week. Chris wanted to have sort of an idea if you wanted to participate by March the 1st. He has bumped that to March the 6th. So he said we'll give everybody 2 more weeks to sort of pray about it and make their decisions. But this Sunday, he's going to start having cards available for you to fill out and just indicate your area of interest. If maybe you want to help with the water team, or you want to be on a crew, or an encourager, or food, whatever it is you might want to, in whatever capacity you might want to serve, he's going to have cards for you to indicate that starting this Sunday. So just be on the lookout for those. They'll be in the foyer or out on the podium where he preaches from, and that'll be this Sunday. So we'll start with prayer, and then we'll be back in 2 Corinthians. Oh, got one more. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All right. So if you hadn't signed up, no worries. We just sign up for fun around here. It's not a firm thing. So, Paris. Okay. Wow. He's opened the floodgates. Yeah. All right. We'll open with prayer. Dear Lord, I thank you again just for another opportunity to come together and study your word, and we thank you for the beauty that you've bestowed upon us today, for the rain and for the warmth, and just this little burst of spring that you've given us. And I just pray that it opens our hearts to your word this evening, and that we can take what we learned from Paul and just use it. We can apply it. Just pray that we have learned from his lessons about giving, and I pray that we will continue to learn what he teaches us about giving through the scriptures. And I pray for all those who are here and all those who are watching as well. In Jesus' name, amen. So last week, we were again still in 2 Corinthians, and we had 3 takeaways. We've been sort of on this continuing lesson about being generous and giving that Paul has been exhibiting to the church in Corinth. And we had 3 takeaways from last week's lesson. First, give because you want to, not because you feel obligated to. Secondly, to give sacrificially, because Paul has given us examples now. He's shown that, of course, Jesus gave sacrificially, and he also gave us the very practical example of the Macedonians giving sacrificially. So give sacrificially like those examples he gave. And thirdly, to not just talk about it, to actually do something, to actually go out and give and sacrifice of yourself. And when you do so, do it abundantly. And you're going to hear that refrain repeated again tonight. So Paul's essentially saying to the Corinthians, hey, you gave to the church in Jerusalem before. We hit our rocky patch, right? We had a rough spot in our relationship where there was tension between Paul and the Corinthians, and we moved past that, right? We've gone beyond it. And so now I want you guys to pick back up where you left off and keep giving and contributing to the church in Jerusalem, and give in a joyful and abundant way. Now, tonight, as we close chapter 8, Paul's going to bring Titus back into the mix. So he comes back into the fold. And specifically, he's going to talk about how God gives us passions for certain people, or, in some cases, certain organizations, and how we can help those people or those organizations by being faithful with our giving and by sharing our passions with others. So we got tonight, and then we're going to have 2 more weeks where we're going to be talking about giving and the lessons from Paul, and then we'll be moving into the latter chapters of 2 Corinthians. So we're going to start tonight with 2 Corinthians 8, verses 16 and 17. 16 and 17. But thanks be to God, who put in the heart of Titus the same eagerness for you that I myself have. For he not only accepted our appeal, but since he is more eager than ever, he is going to you of his own accord. All right, I've got my stuff backwards here. It's throwing me off. So we already know that Paul cares deeply for the Corinthians. Why on earth would he have written these letters to the church if he didn't? All right, we've pretty well established that he cares deeply for the Corinthians. But what's surprising is what Paul says here about Titus. He says that Titus has the same concern for the Corinthians that Paul himself does. And that seems kind of like a simple statement. Okay, Titus shares the same passion for the Corinthians that Paul does. Big deal, right? What's the significance here? Well, think about, Paul's been working in different communities and churches, getting, founding and starting these churches all throughout Greece and Asia Minor. And now he's found a colleague who has the same heart that he does for the church in Corinth. He's found Titus, who says, man, one visit and I was sold. You sent me that one time, and I saw the faithfulness of these people. And you told me, right, you told me they were a great group of followers, a great group of believers. But when I saw it with my eyes, I was convinced. And you really, he's found his spot right here. He says, I really want to join in and help out with the church in Corinth. But this wasn't Paul's doing, right? Even though Paul is the one who sent him, it was God who really put everything into motion, right? Paul just did what the Lord told him to. He sent Titus because God told him to. And the Lord instilled this desire for the Corinthians within Titus. He instilled it in Paul, and then he instilled it in Titus. And you and I are very similar to both Paul and Titus. Because if you're sitting here right now, you can think of a group of people or an organization that comes to your mind when somebody asks you, who do you have a passion to help? Is it a specific group of people, or is there an organization that you really, really feel that has a God-given passion for you to help? And odds are you can identify that. Right? Most of us have found one or two that we really sort of zone in on. For some, it's helping children. For some, it's helping youth. For others, it's working with a food bank or with a pregnancy care clinic or local or international missions. We've all got that niche, right? We've all got that area where we really like to focus and support because it's God-given. And understand, right? Paul's saying right here, by bringing Titus into the fold, he's saying, I can't do this by myself, right? God has called not just me, but he's called others as well. He wants, Titus to join in, and he wants, by extension, friends of Titus to join in with him. This was not a one-person effort. Even though we think of Paul and we think of these books, he was not alone. There was a team. I think about when I teach the American Revolution to my students, and I'm sure most of you know the story of Paul Revere and how he rides out into the countryside late into the midnight and the morning hours to warn the countryside that the British are coming. We get this sort of idea in our heads because the way the storybooks told us that it was just Paul Revere, but no, there were networks. There were dozens of riders going into the countryside. He wasn't by himself. He could not do it alone. So Paul Revere couldn't do it alone. This Paul couldn't do it alone either. They needed help and they needed assistance. So what I take from this is Paul shared his passion for the Corinthians with Titus. And look what Titus did. He joined in and said, man, I love this. I want to be a part of what's going on in Corinth. Think about what you can achieve if you share your passion with those around you, right? Maybe you've really zoned in on something, but you know somebody who's wanting to contribute. They want to give to a group or to an organization, but they just haven't found their spot yet. Maybe you sharing with them is going to open that door for them. And so I'm going to give you a non-spiritual example first, and then I'll bring it full circle, and I'll give you a spiritual example on the back end. But this is an example of one of my passions that was adopted by someone else. So while I take y'all back to my college days all the time, I guess I yearn for them. But while I was in grad school, I had the decision of, I'm moving back to Boone. Who am I going to room with? And it turns out somebody that I was friends with in high school and in Boy Scouts was up there at the time, and he was looking for a roommate too. And some of y'all know, actually most of you know him as Jordan Holcomb. And so I got in touch with him, and we became roommates, and we had a lot of shared passions. We loved Appalachian football, we loved NASCAR, we loved Duck Dynasty, and we loved late night cookout runs. So this was like a roommate relationship that was destined for greatness. All right, we got together and I was like, this is going to be fun. All right, we're really going to have a good time this year. But for all the similar interests we had interests that were all our own. Y'all know how unique I am with my tastes of certain things. Jordan had a fondness for duck hunting, And, as any friend would do, he tried to introduce me to it. And so he took me duck hunting with him one day. And, I enjoyed the fellowship. I enjoyed being with him and his buddies and getting to learn something new. But the idea of intentionally waking up at 5 a.m. to go and freeze my hiney off was, nope, I was done. I did it once and I said, I love you, Jordan, but I'm out. I'm not doing this again. And we only saw one duck. So it was kind of, not the greatest experience. But then I said, all right, you've tried your hand with me. Let me try my hand with you. So I tried to share my passion of hockey with him. And we both grew up big NASCAR fans, but Jordan never really got into hockey like I had. So we're in our apartment, and, a couple of nights a week, if the games were on, I'd turn them on and I'd watch them. And every once in a while, he'd sit down and join me. And eventually, he got hooked. And lucky for me, I was able to convince him to adopt my team, to adopt Nashville as his favorite team too. So we've been going to games ever since. That's just one example. Other people have influenced me as well. I think about my coworkers who have influenced me to become a runner, and this crazy passion that I have for Disney World and Universal. It's we share, and people really embrace our passions, but we have to share them. So if my passion for a sport could influence a friend, I promise you, whatever your passions are can influence people around you as well. Embrace those God-given passions. He's given them to you for a reason, and you never know who they're going to touch. And don't be afraid to piggyback on somebody else's passion either. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you just need to join in with something great that's already going on. Now, I told you I was going to bring it full circle. We're coming back to the spiritual example here. And I want you to imagine for a second if Chris hadn't decided, you know what, I love helping my community, but I'm going to keep that to myself. I'm not going to share that with anybody else. I'm just going to do this on my own and do as much as I can, where I can, when I can. If he hadn't shared that passion with others, there's no impact, right? We're not discussing, are you going to participate this summer? And we would have missed out on hundreds of opportunities to share the gospel and Jesus' love in this county. So I know that idea had to have sounded crazy when he started, brainstorming it and coming up with it in his head. But look what crazy got us, right? It has made such an impact on our lives and on this community. So sometimes all you got to do is share. Paul shared with Titus, and Titus ran with it, and he jumped right in with him. So maybe, just sharing your passion can help somebody else find their spot as well. And then Paul continued in verse 17. He stated that not only did Titus welcome the assignment to go to Corinth again, but he's looking forward to it. He's more than willing to return. He was impressed with the Corinthians in his first visit, and he wanted to see them again. And, for me, it reminds me of in the classroom when I miss a day, and I come back in and the substitute says, wow, your kids were great today. And I'm thinking, all right, I got a good report. The kids were good. That's kind of what I feel, Paul had gotten there. He said, Titus comes back and he says, man, the Corinthians are good. And Paul says, all right, well, then it's clear that you're good for the job. You want to do it again? Let's run it back. And so Titus is going back, and he's got this energy. He's got this excitement, and he's going to take it with him. And we continue with verses 18 and 19, just looking a little bit more at Paul's instructions for Titus here, 18 and 19. With him we are sending the brother, who is famous among all the churches for his proclaiming the good news. And not only that, but he has also been appointed by the churches to travel with us while we are administering this generous undertaking for the glory of the Lord himself and to show our goodwill. Actually, I'm going to continue. We're going to go on through 21 right here. Going through verse 21. We intend that no one should blame us about this generous gift that we are administering, for we intend to do what is right, not only in the Lord's sight, but also in the sight of others. So this time around, Paul is not going to send Titus back alone. He says, all right, you're gonna have some comrades with you. And he lists the first one right here. And if you're thinking, okay, why is he sending people with him this time? Did he not trust him? What's going on here? Well, he trusted Titus, absolutely. But remember, Titus is dealing with finances. He's collecting money. And there's just a subtle little lesson right there, right? Have more than two eyeballs on it. Make sure that things are being looked after. not because we don't trust you, but because we want the people to trust the process. We want the people to trust what's going on here. Now, Paul doesn't give us this man's name, so apparently it wasn't important enough for us to know or to dig any further on. But we do know that this man is known well in that region. He had served the gospel well, and the people from the churches nearby knew of him, and he appeared to be a respectable figure within the church. So regardless of who it is, Paul has sent this teammate with Titus to be sure, we're going to make sure that people trust this collection. There's not going to be any doubt. People aren't going to say, oh, are they pocketing money? Are they, is this stuff going where it shouldn't be? There's going to be no discrepancies. He's saying we're going to have 2 pairs of eyes on it, at least. We're going to add to that here in just a second. But you're going to have, multiple people involved to make sure everything is going well. Make sure the aesthetics are good, make sure everything's good. And now that Paul has got his relationship with the Corinthians back on good standing, he's wanting to make sure that there's no chance of anything else, breaking it up again. So we want to make sure that we're in good shape here. So he's adding this safeguard. And it's not the most spiritual thing to think about. We're talking about finances and making sure that they're taken care of in the right way. But we think about that when we give. We want things to go in the right place. We want to make sure that they're safe, and we want multiple people to have their eyes on a transaction. So Paul is giving a very practical lesson right here. He wants this collection to go well. He's being completely transparent. He says, there's nothing hidden here. We're going to have multiple people involved so that you can trust this collection. And so that's sort of the brief lesson that you get from those core verses right there in the meat of this lesson. And we're going to conclude tonight with verses 22 through 24. So as we wrap up this chapter, you sort of get the sense and the idea of, he's going to add one more person to the fold here, and he's going to make sure that everybody is really locked in and say, he sort of gives one more push and says, hey, make sure you're giving. Make sure you're contributing to this. You've done it before. Let's finish what you started. So we'll look at 22 through 24. And with them we are sending our brother, whom we have often tested and found eager in many matters, but who is now more eager than ever because of his great confidence in you. As for Titus, he is my partner and co-worker in your service. As for our brothers, they are messengers of the churches, the glory of Christ. Therefore, openly before the churches, show them the proof of your love and of our reason for boasting about you. So we learn that Titus and his companion are going to add one more to their number. So it's not just 2, there's going to be 3 that are traveling to gather this collection. And again, we don't know the name of this third person. We didn't know it of the second. We don't know it of the third. But we learned that he is a zealous individual. He is eager. He wants to see stuff done. Right? He's one of those, he's not just talking about it, he's going out and doing it. He's going to deliver for Paul. So he wants to see this collection be fruitful. And in addition to being zealous, he's been spiritually tested. So Paul trusts him. He's proven himself to be a strong believer. And he exhibits confidence that the Corinthians, they're going to give in a mighty way. So this third person, I think about an impact crew. You've got the people who, put the hammer to the nails, but you've got to have the people who are there to build up and encourage as well. And it appears that this third person has that type of a role. He's big on getting stuff done and pushing people in the right direction. He's not somebody who is going to doubt this. He's going to encourage it for sure. And finally, from a practical standpoint, if you got 2 people watching over the finances, it's not going to hurt to have a third, right? So Paul adds one more to the fold here. In verse 23, he gives these 3 men one more nod of approval. He says, in case you weren't convinced that these 3 are the right people for the job, let me give you one more inkling as to why I've chosen them. He says, first he mentions Titus. And he says, Titus is my partner. Titus is my co-worker. He doesn't describe his relationship with Titus as a boss and an employee. He says, no, we're equal. We're on level ground. He is the same. They're equally yoked in their commitment to the Corinthians. So this is a team effort, right? And then the other 2 brothers are representatives of the church and an honor to Christ. You can't argue with that, right? So these brothers represent Christ in an honorable way, and they set themselves apart. and they can immediately respond to people who say, there's something different about you. What is it that's different about you? And they can be like, hey, I've got Christ in me, right? That's the difference. That's what sets me apart. And then verse 24, Paul repeats his charge. Here's that last push. His charge to the Corinthians: show Titus and these two brothers what you are capable of. Paul knew the Corinthians were a giving people. He'd seen it before. He knew it was very easily a possibility of that happening again. But he wanted them to prove to these three men, right? Prove to them that you're going to deliver. You're going to bring a mighty gift forward for the church in Jerusalem. Prove your love for Christ and his followers. Prove that Paul had every right to be prideful in them and give in a way that is so tremendous that other churches nearby are going to be like, wow, did you see what the Corinthians did? He doesn't care about the amount. He just wants people to see the sacrifice. He wants people to see the fruit in Jerusalem that comes from this gift and comes from this giving. Let them be blown away by the impact, not by the amount. And so he says, prove with your faith in God, prove your love for others with this transaction, with this giving. Show what you can do in Jerusalem and prove your love for God and prove your faith in God right here. And he's saying there's a need, right? He's laid it out. He's laid the flyer out and said there's a need in Jerusalem. Are you going to fill it? Are you going to help them out? Because they need you at this very moment. Don't just talk about it. Go out and do it. Find a way to fill that need. So, to summarize tonight, right, from scriptures, I like to sort of bring it back to 3 points at the end if we can. And the first point, hopefully, was the biggest one that stuck with you. If you don't have one, find that passion. Find that group of people. Find that organization that you can really commit yourself to. Whether that's a soup kitchen or working with the homeless or whatever it is, right? There's so many needs in this world, not only in big cities, but in our small communities as well, that need to be met. Find your spot. Find the place where you can contribute. Maybe that's helping with empty bowls. Doctor just shared one of his passions with us tonight, and Dave has shared about New Hope before, right? And Compassion Care. And so find, maybe you don't need to go out and find a new one. Maybe you just need to go and help people who are already in our church who are doing good things. But whatever it is, find your passion and embrace it. And then secondly, share that passion. Don't keep it in. Don't go out and say, I can do this all by myself. I'm guilty of that a lot. I like to do things on my own. But see if others will, be just as joyful and just as willing to contribute and share in your passion. And thirdly, prove your faith to God, prove your love for others by giving. Don't just talk, go out and do it. That's what Paul's been preaching right here, is go out and find the needs and fill them. Don't let the needs get brushed under the rug and saved for another week. We don't know how long we've got. So when you see the need, go after it. Go at it full force and see if you can fill those needs and meet the needs of fellow believers and fellow followers of Christ. As we close tonight, I do have a few prayer requests to mention to you. We do want to continue to lift up the Junior Colmer family and his loss. Chris gave me an update on Billy Ray tonight. He said that they have decreased his oxygen. He kind of has good days and bad days right now. But he said the plan is they're hoping for a 30-day stay in the hospital in Greensboro, and then that he'll hopefully be able to come home. So hopefully another month, and he'll be back home. So we'll pray for continued progress there. Michael Dixon had his gallbladder removed, but is doing well. So we do want to pray for him. And then Chris also mentioned Pete from Alpha Acres has had back surgery. He's not been able to get an update, and there are no visitors allowed for him right now. So we do want to lift him up. Are there others for tonight? Pete's doing well? Okay, good. So Pete's doing okay. That's Clara Hines in ICU with a brain bleed. Thank you, Paris. Stan. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, praise for the sweetheart banquet for sure. You had to laugh at some point. I mean, yeah, yeah. We've got the next host of Jeopardy among us. All right, we can toss Julie's name out there for that. Any other praises? All right, I'm going to call on Doctor to close us out tonight.